Greetings once again. My name is Naye, Lupondwana, and welcome to Bible Answers. Today we're joined once again by Pastor Joshua Maponga. He is giving us some more nuggets on what we have been pursuing, answers from the Bible. Today we're going to try and press him a bit on giving us some biblical support for the things that he has given as answers and responses. And we're going to be focusing and picking up from last week, talking about Bible interpretation. As we have known that there are hermeneutic exegeses and all sorts of things, all sorts of ways of interpreting the Bible. And so we'll be focusing on that today. Pastor Maponga, thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us.
Thank you for having me again.
We had a conversation with one of our pastors, Pastor Magubane, and he was invested in hermeneutics. I'd like us to go a bit deeper into that conversation because we have a responsibility not only to read the Bible, but to read it correctly. As a layperson who has never studied theology, who does not even understand or know anything about exegeses, hermeneutics, and all of those things, how would you suggest and propose we as lay people interpret the Bible?
Firstly, let's agree that the Bible was not written for homileticians and exegesis. It was not written as a book to be studied. It was written as a book to be lived. Therefore, there must be a great schism, difference, clear distinction between reading for academic purposes and reading for personal growth purposes. Unfortunately, we have allowed the theologians to become the interpreters of lifestyle, when in fact the one who wrote the book did not write it for them, he wrote it for us. So maybe better is a Torah that is lived than a Torah that is written.
So for you to live it, for you to live according to it and by it, you need to be able to understand it. How do we glean and gain that understanding?
When exegesis and hermeneutics is more interested in etymology, grammar, and diction, living is interested in the principles that are outlined in the text. Like we said the other day, if you are supposed to read the book of Genesis, just as an example, starting from where people know, maybe slightly to where they don't know, it's one thing for an exegetical preacher to say, at the beginning, the word beginning here used is arche, which means Greek, which means it is the Genesis, it is what, and heavens and earth. And then you go on the etymological ramp of words. Whereas for practical living, I would simply parallel what your father did and what you must do. What do I mean by that? If in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and I look at it and say, in beginning, create your heavens and create your earth. Speak into the substances that are formless and void, empty situations in your life. Let there be light, let there be knowledge, let there be information. Separate your waters so that you can plant your things on good ground. Learn to separate your friends that are useless and etc. Others that belong to the sea, push them to the sea. Others that belong in the sky where you don't understand them, push them there. But have a fertile ground. And the chronological movement of creation from light to separation, to animals, to vegetations, to fish, and finally the creation of man. How do you progressively plan your life that the resources that you need on day 6 have been supplied on day 4, day 2, day 3? And so for me, it has opened up a whole new appreciation. Instead of me teaching on the keeping of the Sabbath as an institution for the church on chapter 2, therefore stop it, I make it personal. Have I stopped hating people? Have I stopped being angry? Do I have access into the Sabbath rest as it was in the beginning? How do I recreate Genesis in my own life? And for all practical purposes, where is the Genesis? When did God stand in my life and he saw the formlessness and the void in it, and he started doing a work of creation? So I hope you can sense the difference between a theologian and being trained to exegete the passage and a lay person simply reading the Bible and say, well, Dad was here. This is what he did. And if ever this is my life and the chaos that it has, How do I walk using the principles of Genesis to go to the end? And then you come around again to the backside and say, well, the creation of light, that is the white part. The creation of water, that is the blue part. The creation of vegetation, that is the green part. You go through the whole passage again, finding the various colors of creation. And there, boom, there your health principles come out. When do you eat the white foods? When do you eat the green foods? When do you eat the blue foods? And etc. And while you're talking about that, the vegetarians and dietitians are on the left. The mystic people are on the left, giving you the same information, which the Bible is giving you. There it comes into fashion. There it comes into energies. How do you express your life? What makes you dress up in gray? What are you spiritually portraying? A bit of royalty there, a bit of earthy, a bit of etc. And all these things become a connected prism of life, the colorful spectrum of life. And that does not need as much mental torture as the theologians come and say, well, you won't understand the Greek and the Hebrew. You're right. Maybe we actually don't need to understand it. We just need to know, what did God do and what must I do?
Let's talk about another way. You as theologians will have us believe that the Bible is not only divine stuff. It has everything you want, even the things that we do here on earth, like what is intimated in the Songs of Solomon. That's hardly ever heavenly. This is the stuff that we do. They don't do that stuff in heaven. But the curiosity is, when do we say this book in the Bible is focusing only on this and it is not focusing on that? When do we say this was meant for that generation and not us? When do we distinguish? I hear you from the book of Genesis. You have lifted nice ways of living that we can still apply today. But there are things that we are told by yourselves as theologians that no longer applies now. When do you determine that this applies and this one does not?
Let me admit blatantly that is the mischief of the theological institutions, to again teach its theologians to be selective about inspiration. In my old age now, I actually am looking for an Old Testament church. People who will be honest to text, because the things that you are saying are no longer applicable. In all honesty, they are applicable. And just to give you a brush quickly, the health principles that are established in the Old Testament, you cannot crucify them on the cross because Jesus has died. We no longer need to wash our hands when you go to the bathroom or dig a toilet. We no longer need land because Jesus has died on the cross. We are waiting for the new Jerusalem. Then if that is the case, then we no longer need the Sabbath. We no longer need marriage. We no longer need anything. We no longer need tithe and offerings. Then you fall in the same trap you're trying to run away from by accepting a New Testament gospel which is void of the culture of the Old Testament. Let me be very clear, and this statement must echo for ceaseless ages of eternity, that when you interpret the Bible, be careful that you don't interpret the culture to adapt to the one who is interpreting the text. I'll say that slowly. By interpreting the biblical text, which is a Hebrew text, seated in its culture, be careful that when you get to this culture that you find, in your zeal of interpretation, you'd want to take and say, but in my tribe it is like this, in my family it is like this. Then by interpreting the culture to adapt it to your own culture, you are writing a new text altogether, which is far from the main text itself. And I think our theologians have not been exception in falling into that trap of trying to look through the Bible through the Reformation, evangelical, Pentecostal, Adventist window. It's almost like we're peeping into the Bible and say, so what does it say about us? Instead of us allowing the Bible to become the text which dictates to us how we should, we are walking to the Bible to make it agree with our practices, almost making it sound like we and God, we sat in our conference room and we wrote the Bible for the rest of the world.
So what you're suggesting is nothing is non-applicable today. You're saying everything is applicable as it was then, as it is today.
I will give you in a nice line that the principles don't change. People may change, Circumcision could have been given in one lifespan in the Abrahamic era. As a covenant between me and you must circumcise, la la la. Paul comes, our favorite author, and there's no more need to circumcise. Jews and Gentiles, we are ready to go. We can join the faith with our foreskins and we worship. Jacob Zuma comes 2,000 years later and says, actually, circumcision reduces the chances of contracting AIDS. Boom, we're back to the Old Testament. So there was actually a fundamental principle on circumcision, which is timeless. In as much as you may change and adapt and accept the New Testament theology for its exceptions to Old Testament traditions, but if you miss the principle, when a woman is in her periods, she must not be forced to cook and etc. and participate in conjugal rights. God, in his psychology and understanding of the women species and the stresses that they are going through during that period, and he places that. You come around and say, now is when the New Testament. You can actually drink tablets and periods can stop and sex can continue. Now you're dealing with a woman who is defiled. And I'm using that in the Old Testament classic. You're dealing with a woman who's defiled. Defiled how? She's going through some processes in her own body that are causing her a whole lot of emotional issues. She needs to empty and then she can clean up herself for engagement in the following month. You're shortcutting the process and say it's not necessary to go through that. So spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, and from the divine perspective, which the author wrote it, you ignore all that because sex must continue in the house for 30 days in a month, non-stop, because this must be done to satisfy your ego. But now you miss the idea that when a woman is given that moment of exclusion, the moment of reflection, to recollect herself, in Hebraic literature, then when a woman is going through that period, she's realigning herself. This, what is going out of her, could have been a child. It's a moment of mourning. And I know modern girls would want to say, this is not just for children, etc. Let me just leave you for a second. Let's appreciate the principle. And at the end of the periods, then the woman goes through the process of cleansing herself, cleaning up her body, does the bath, the traditional Hebrew bath, and while she's bathing, she's praying, dedicating her body and her womb, so that if in the following month it should happen that a child should be here, the woman has dedicated herself for that service ahead of schedule. So you come in the 21st century with your quick pen. When a woman is in a period, she's unclean. This is no longer valid. Boom, let's proceed. And you deal with women who have psychological, traumatic, spiritual baggage that is not emptied from month to month. And because that moment, so let's go out there looking for principles. I know I use a very crude example, but I wanted to drive that point home, that even the practice might be exempted, but the principle still applies.
Yeah. When we are talking about Hebrew culture, it becomes somewhat problematic because you'll find people who are complaining that I actually want to adopt the culture of the God, the Almighty God, not the culture of the people God so happened to have chosen. Am I therefore becoming a Jew when I'm becoming God's child, or am I able to become God's child while being a Hlubi or a Shona in your case?
I'm glad you are raising that, because now it brings us back to the principle that whether you're a Hlubi or a Shona, do your women go through the month? What is the principle of managing, dealing, working, living with women when they are going through this period? Then we learn sensitivity, reducing and reduction of family duties, allowing them moments of silence and meditation, allowing their solitary confinement and spiritual cleansing, their preparation for the next. So for me, those principles are cross-culture. And even in our own traditional spaces as Africans, there's a Hlubi, there's a Xhosa. When a woman is in that space, we had our own ways of dealing with them, to such an extent that women in the Old Testament and in African culture are in control of their sexuality, because she's the one who tells you, I am clean or unclean. I'm not. and I'm going through certain things. And as a man, you'd know how to become temperate and how to wait patiently on the other side as she's also going. So there's discipline, there's mutual understanding, and the whole thing of males always having to use their sexuality to overburden women, it places. And now I can even push a bit further, just to torture you a bit. Then you find that our old women in old days of old, then they would find these young girls when they start those periods, and then they give them the beads. And then they start count. The day you start your periods, this is the white bead, the white. And then here, you're getting cleaner. And then they put those beads around them so that the children, the girl child, would actually know how to manage her periods. She carried her monthly cycle and her sexuality on her waist, and by counting them. Now you come around and you find, you come here with excitement, boom, paganism. So are you telling me that drinking contraception is holier than putting contraception beads around your waist? Which one is correct?
Perhaps we might have to have a special conversation exclusively about biblical sexuality. Perhaps we'll have to invite you for that. I want to ask my final question on interpretation. History. The scriptures are full of historical references, some of which are inaccurate when you look at history as we have it documented today, and when you look at what was written by the historians at the time. Whether it is going to be something that is going to be validated by Jerome or Josephus. And then you look at historians who have scientific evidence today and archaeological evidence and all of those sorts of scientific proofs that contradicts. Which do you propose we support? The Bible, which has been proven by science to be scientifically inaccurate and therefore incorrect, or the Bible?
Two aspects I can give you. In the midst of the oral tradition, take note that oral tradition does not have an obsession with the amount of accuracy you are interested in, but it has interest in terms of passing on. You are a Hlubi, for example. Hlubi is a Pungane and etc. and back to Embo. And you mention one word here. When I mention the next word, you may not know that they're actually 200 years gap. By the time I mention the third word, it's another 3,000 years.
It's far.
When I mention Embo, I'm back in the cradle of humankind, millions and thousands of years ago. So when you hear oral tradition and you are using Eurocentric apparatus to cut through the oral tradition, you may find that your scissors is very short. It won't cut right up to the end of the cloth. So maybe that's first one. Let's be a bit gentle when it comes to the biblical history and its seemingly scanty oral tradition technique that it used. In the beginning, Genesis 1, in the beginning, Genesis 2. And can you say there are 1,000 years of difference between the two creation stories? Or is Moses who is asking back the question, but what happened here? How were human beings created? And then the one who is relating the story has to go back, in this case, who was Jethro, in my own submission. So has to go back again and say, oh no, okay, on that part, these are the details that are missing. So if you begin to appreciate the text, that Daniel is where he is, but the Medo-Persians are in the book of Kings, and then the book of Nehemiah must actually be after the book of Daniel and the book of Ezra. So if you forget that this is oral tradition, and you want to go on pen and paper, paragraph 1, subsection 2, you may actually miss the whole passage. And secondly, on the issue of confirming the Bible narrative, the academic student of the 21st century, I'll pick the argument slightly higher, then the onus is on us to go back to some of the biblical material that we have, historical material that we have, scientific materials that we have, and then reconfigure our theology that is obsessed with dates, so that even our 1844 stories can begin to have some interesting direction. Who knows if 1844 is actually happening now than then? And imagine the difference it makes immediately when you tamper with the dates of those things. So it will hit hard on the fundamentals of the church, where for so long we've been dogmatic about one position. But when modern scholars should, at least if they can, find the historical information that is accurate, will that information not directly impact on our theological interpretation going forward? It's a risk the modern theologians, and particularly our church, is not prepared to get involved in.
All right, we're going to leave it right there for now. This is a three-part conversation we're having with the pastor to address a number of things. Like I said, we will invite him again perhaps for the fourth and the fifth one to talk about exclusively Christian and biblical sexuality. Until then, have a wonderful day and Godspeed.
Thank you for watching another episode of Bible Answers on this platform. Bible Answers is produced for the purposes of providing credible answers to your pressing questions using the Bible as the principal source of discretion. We, in collaboration with the pastors that support this ministry, would love to answer your questions. So post your questions on our Facebook page at Calvin on Ethel SDA, or send them directly to the host, Naye Lupondwana, still on Facebook. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and support this ministry. Join us again next week for another episode of Bible Answers. Until then, God bless and Godspeed.
Mama saw like flowers in the garden. She cared for me when I was small. She did her best. You are very special. You are beautiful like a flower. Thank you for giving me strength. You love you, Mom. A happy Mother's Day. My mom, my super. She even has stretch marks to show for it. I think they're pretty cool. I find them beautiful. They prove that she brought life into this world. Imagine a world without mummies. I don't even want to go there. Life would be so difficult and boring too. Because mummies bring color. And that's what influences the soul. Thank you to all mummies. Happy Mother's Day. I love you.
Wow. This picture reminds me of many memories me and my mother had. We laughed, talked, cried together. She has made me the person that I am today. She has encouraged me, helped me through all thick and thin. She's been the woman in my life. She's been the one that has helped me through all that I've been through. She's the one that helped me to pray. And she's developed me as a person that I am today. And on this Mother's Day, I'd like to thank her for being the mother that she is to me, for being the character in my life. And when my father died, she's been the one that's been able to help us. And I thank her for that, because she's been the one that has helped us through all that we have went through. And so on this Mother's Day, I'd like to thank her and bless. And I ask God that she's blessed us with being the mother that she is. And I thank you very much for what you've done to us, Mother. You've helped us through all we have been through. You've helped me become a better person. You've helped me reach my goals that I have set. And I thank you very much. I love you very much.
Happy Mother's Day!
Jesus went and sat by the lake, and such a large crowd gathered around him. And he got into the boat to sit down. While the crowd stood on the shore, he told them many things in parables, saying, "Listen, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path. And the birds came and they devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil. They sprang up quickly because the soil was not deep. But when the sun came up, they were scorched, and because they did not have sufficient root, they withered. Other seeds fell among the thorns, and they grew up and choked them. But other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100 times as much as some 60 and 30. Then Jesus explains, when anyone hears the word about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches what was sown in his heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The seed sown on rocky ground is the person who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. But he has no root in himself and does not endure. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, immediately he falls away. The seed sown among the thorns is the person who hears the word, but worldly cares and seductiveness of wealth choke the word, so it produces nothing. But as for the seed sown on good soil, this is the person who hears the word and understands. He bears fruit yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what he has sown. Choose to be good soil every day, because by being good soil, you will hear and understand the word of God and surely bear much fruit.
COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time. It is spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby. These droplets are too heavy to travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on surfaces is not yet known. So it is wise to clean surfaces regularly, particularly in the vicinity of people infected with COVID-19. Hands touch many surfaces, which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surface to yourself. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with the bend of your elbow or use a disposable tissue. If a tissue is used, discard it immediately into a closed bin. The most effective way to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus is to clean your hands frequently with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. This will eliminate the virus if it is on your hands. Stay healthy and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Hi everyone, it's Aunt Fernita. Today's story is called Noah Builds a Boat. The memory verse is from Psalm 143, verse 10. It says, "Teach me to do your will, for you are my God." Today's message is the people in God's family want to do His will. When your parents ask you to do something, do you do it without asking why? Do you do it because you love them? Noah was asked by God to build a huge boat. He could have said no. What do you think he did? Noah believed in God at a time when godly men were hard to find. The earth was still young. Only 10 generations had passed since the creation of the world. But people had become so wicked that God decided He should start over. Just one family of righteous people was left on earth. Through that family, God would save the human race and all the creatures He had created. That family included Noah, his wife, their 3 sons, and their wives. God told Noah his plan to destroy the earth with a flood. He also told Noah to build a boat. The boat was to carry Noah, his family, and each kind of animal safely through the flood. The boat Noah was to build was no ordinary boat. It was huge. It was as long as 1.5 football or soccer fields. It was taller than a 4-story building. God gave Noah instructions to be followed very carefully, and Noah set to work. Noah's great-grandfather Enoch had been a righteous man. God took him to heaven so he wouldn't die. Enoch passed on the family heritage of godliness. Methuselah, in turn, passed it on to his sons and to his grandson, Noah. And then Noah had 3 sons of his own, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So one righteous family, a small group of godly people, was still left on the earth, and they helped Noah build the big boat. That big boat would save the human race and all the different creatures God had created. What an awesome responsibility! Noah and his sons, his uncles, and grandfather were all human. In the years of working together, they probably had some disagreements. But they had an important goal. They had a huge project to finish. They had to work together to follow God's plan. They had to put aside their differences in order to do God's will. Before the boat was finished, God took Enoch to live in heaven, and Noah's other relatives died. Only Noah and his family were left. You may never be asked to build a huge boat. You will never be asked to help save the world from another flood. But God still wants His people to do what He asks. He still wants His people to work together to fulfill His wishes. He may ask you to do another job that requires just as much teamwork. You may need just as much cooperation as was needed for building the ark. Doing God's will is still a part of God's plan for us. Getting along with others is still a part of God's plan too. Listening and working for God was important for Noah and his family, and it's important for us today.
Created and produced by Falvo Fowler. This podcast is read by Franita Buddy Fullwood for Gracelink.net. Animation and artwork by Giogo Godoy. Audio is post-produced by Faith Toe at Studio El Piso in Singapore. The theme music is by Clayton Kinney. The audio engineer was Maurice Bailey.
Lord, I've been born again. I've been born again. Lord, I've been born again. I've been born again. I've been born again. To the river, and I've been baptized, converted, and I feel alright. I've been born again. 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 To the river, and I've been baptized, converted, and I feel alright. I've been born again. I've been born again. Oh, you know Jesus, my Lord. I've been born. I sure do love your name. I've been born. I've been born. I've been born. I trust. I've been born. My Lord. I've been born. And if you had not died, my soul would not be saved. I've been born. That's the reason. I've been born. I've been born again. I've been born again. I've been born again. I've been born again. Lord, I've been born again. I've been born again. I've been born again. Don't you know that I've been to the river, and I've been baptized, my soul converted, I feel alright. I've been born again. I've been born again. I went to the valley. I've been born. I didn't go to stay. I've been born again. again. My soul got happy. I've been born. And I stayed obeying. I've been born
Jesus
again.
picked me up and he turned me around.
I've been born again.
He placed my feet
I've been born.
down on my changing ground. Well, I've been to the river,
I've been born.
and I've been baptized.
I've been born.
My soul is anchored in Jesus, and I feel alright.
I've been born.
Well, he helps me
I've been born. I've been born.
and he helps me
I've been born. I've been born.
and he helps me
I've been born.
in the evening.
I've been born.
And he will help you too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've been born again.
I've been born again.
I've been born again. I've been born again.
I've been born again.
I've been born again.
Don't you know that I've been
To the river,
and I've been
baptized,
my soul,
converted,
and I feel
alright.
that's the reason.
I've been born.
I've been born again.
I've been born again.
He picked me up
I've
and he
been
turned me
born.
around.
I've been born.
He picked me up and he
I've been
turned me around.
I've been born again.
I want to live on high with my Savior eternally. Live with the saints of old and learn the redemption song. I want to live on high and sing the redemption song. Praise and honor to my King. Praise and honor to my King. I want to live on high and sing the redemption song. Praise and honor to my King. Praise and honor to my King. Learn of his ways, be in his love, peace unto me, love unto you. Precious is he, and all in his grace, redeemed at the cross. Precious is he, and all in his grace, redeemed at the cross. I want to live on high and sing the redemption song. Praise and honor to my King. I want to live high and sing the redemption song. Praise and honor to my King.
Hi everyone, I greet you all in Jesus' name. I'm Pastor Magubane from Calvin on Athol Church. And today, our message for today is found in the book of Revelation, Revelation chapter 1 verse 8. and I'll be reading it shortly. But before we engage with the message of the day, I would firstly like to take this moment to invite you all for a prayerful thought on this pandemic which we are facing as a country, as a people, as a continent, and finally as a global community. We have been struck by the COVID-19 pandemic, which wants to annihilate us as the human race. But at this moment, I want us to be of good courage. And as the Lord would tell Joshua, fear not, for I am with you. And that is what is important. And so at this moment, I'd just like to take a look into your European countries which are seriously struggling, and I want us to put them in a special prayer, and we will pray for them at the end of the sermon. We're looking at your Spain, your Italies, your China, your US, and your Africa as well, and here at home as well. So we will come back to that. And also, I want us to keep. They're very important people whom we need to keep in our prayers constantly. Number one, it's the medical staff, the medical world. We need to keep them in our prayers. They are fighting day and night tirelessly, and we need to thank them for it, and we need to constantly push them. I know a few days ago, I remember there was a story in that the medical team from one of the European countries, they were thinking of giving up because the people keep on dropping like flies. They're just perishing in front of them, regardless of everything that they are doing. And I heard that I read that the police and the fire community, the fire extinguishers, they actually had to come into the hospital and actually remind them of what they are trying to do, and to give them courage and motivate them. And so I want us also to keep them in prayer, in special prayer, not just those in Spain, but all over the world, because what they were experiencing, even other people can also experience the same thing. And so we need to constantly push each other and hold each other by the hand as a family. Right now, we are a community as a family. Like, we have a global community right now, and we are all fighting against the same thing. And so let us not forget to actually keep one another in prayer and give each other strength. So let's move on to the message of the day. Our message is found, as I had said earlier on, our message is found in the book of Revelation chapter 1, verse 8. Okay, and it reads as follows: I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord, which is, which was, and which is to come, the Almighty. The Lord always adds a blessing to the reading of His word. Amen. I remember growing up, whenever I used to talk about this book, I used to say it's the book of Revelations, and even now I always hear people saying it's the book of Revelations, and it's funny how we articulate the name of the book. Also, I do not know I do not know which one precedes which, but we always seem to look at the book of Revelation as a book of revelations. So we're always quoting on a lot of things that the book is actually revealing. But the book is the book of revelation. So in other words, it's one revelation. There aren't many revelations. There's only one revelation. And it's so clear. It is so clear in the beginning of the book. This is the revelation of Jesus Christ. Okay? This is the revelation of Jesus Christ. So the one thing that you should pick up in this book, the one ultimate thing that you should pick up in this book, and nothing else, is Jesus Christ. So when we usually say it's the book of Revelations, we are then moved into this understanding of this idea that there are a lot of things that are being revealed, and that is why whenever we speak of it, we want to take certain things and then we then articulate them as things that have been revealed here. But in essence, if whatever that that you are picking up from this book of Revelation is not what the first part of the book is speaking into, then you have missed it. In other words, if whatever that you are picking up is not Jesus Christ in the book, that means you have got the short end of the stick. You have missed it. It has flown over you, as some usually say. So this is the book. This is the revelation. It is the revelation of Jesus Christ. Okay, that is what it is. And so when the book begins, that is what it tells you, that this is the revelation of Jesus Christ. And so I like the title, the fact that it is a revelation. It is the book of Revelation. Okay, so if you are seeing monsters and beasts and whatever, and that is where it ends, then clearly we are missing it. But anyway, as John the Revelator, as John is busy revealing here, so he starts off with an introduction of which I have stated the revelation of Jesus Christ, and then he continues down up until he gets to this part in the salutations, as some have noted. These are the salutations. We then find the first time that the one whom is being revealed actually speaks and reveals himself. Okay, and he says that I am. So these are the words now spoken by the one whom is being revealed, and that's another beauty and another gem in the book. It is that the one whom is being revealed sometimes comes in and reveals himself, and that's one of the beauty in the book. And so he comes in and he tells us, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the ending. Okay, and then saith the Lord, and then John continues and says, who was, who is, and who is to come, the Almighty. Okay, the one who was, and he is to come. So John gives us three states of being here. These states of being: the one in the past, he was, and then he is, and then he is to come. So today, as you hear this message and as you watch this message, you are constantly in the middle, who is. So constantly, wherever you find yourself, he is. You do not look in. So you don't automatically look into the future. You first look at the past, and then you come here to where you are, and that is, he still is. He is, and he comes at the end. He says the Almighty. So he was, he is, and he is to come, and he is still the Almighty. Okay. And so when you read it, he is the Almighty. Now, why am I tapping into this? It is simple. I'm here to give a message of hope. Okay, I'm here to give a message of hope, and I think this is the one thing that we as people, as believers, we usually struggle with. We usually struggle with this point here, in that we, by nature, we are reactional. We often react to things. So even when it comes to God, whenever we are faced with pandemics, with challenges, with anything that comes to harm us, we then want to react. And often, and this is the challenge now that we have as a human race, we then often think that because we are reactional, therefore God needs to be reactional, or God is reactional. And then and depending on the level of danger which we are facing, we then question who God is, and we don't just question who he is, but we often question his might. Okay, his might, and that is, it's a bit sad, shame. It's a bit sad because seemingly we are not just forgetful, but I don't know, man. I don't know, but at least I truly believe that he understands. Shame. He understands his creatures. He understands his creatures. He understands us. He understands us more than we understand ourselves. Okay, and so. When we forget, I think he's okay with that. I don't think it's nice. I don't think it's nice, shame. But I think he understands us. He understands us, and that's one thing that is also good. The fact that he does understand us. But anyway, our challenge is that for us, the almightiness of God speaks to God actually having to remove us from the challenge. And unfortunately, God does not have a good track record of removing people from challenges. Okay, he does not have a good track record of removing people from challenges. And and I think I do not know why we often think of that. I do not know why we often think of, or perhaps it is because whenever we're reading stories in the Bible, we always read them at the end, or we always read them from the end. Okay, so in other words, we never really experience the story. We never experience the life of the person in whom the story is about. So, what do I mean by that? I mean, when we read about the children of Israel under the hand of the Egyptians, we read it in light of God parting the seas. We read it in light of God removing them finally, but we forget that they were there for almost 400 years. Okay, so they were there for 400 years, and God was still God, and he still was the Almighty. In light of the 300 years or 400 years when he's still silent, but he still is God, and he still is the Almighty. And that's the unfortunate part. We seem to sometimes forget that, and as a result, when we forget that, we then want to find ourselves when God is parting the Red Seas, or rather when we enter Canaan. That is all that we want. We simply want to enter Canaan, and we forget that before Canaan, there's a 400-year wait where God is seemingly silent. Okay, we have that, and then after that, we forget that even after that silent, when he does come into the picture, when he does seem to be coming in, when we recognize him, when we finally recognize him in the picture, he still is able to take us, or he still takes us through a 40-year wilderness experience. Okay. So right now, we are possibly in the 40-year period in the wilderness, or possibly in the 400 years under the hand of the Egyptians. So what am I saying? I'm saying let's not be hasty. Let's not be hasty to Canaan land. Okay, experience God. In fact, if you experience God in the wilderness, you will soon realize that what is more important is the experience of God in the wilderness, as Moses experienced and asked God for them not to move in his absence to Canaan land. Okay. So let's not be hasty into leaving God in the wilderness. Let's stay there and come on. Let's move with God. In fact, David. So what am I saying? I'm saying God will take you through it. He does not take you from it. He does not remove you from it. He takes you through it. Okay? Takes you through it. Now, David understood this. He says in his prayer, he says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, okay, I shall fear no evil. Why? Because thou art with me. Because you, God, are with me. Where? In the valley of the shadow of death. Okay? He is with me in the valley of the shadow of death. Now, he says that even though I walk through, number one, he says David walks through. God does not give him a helicopter ride over the valley of the shadow of death. Okay? He takes him through it. And that is why he's not afraid. But one thing that is important, or a few things to note. When David walks through the valley of the shadow of death, David notes that it is still the valley, and it still has the shadow of death. In other words, all the evil attributes are not removed. They're not removed. Okay? So all the challenges that come in walking in this journey are never removed at all. And David takes time to actually acknowledge them. He says, even though I walk where? In the valley. Which valley? The one of the shadow of death. In other words, it still produces and it still offers death as part of its characteristics. Okay? But what David then says is that he is not afraid. And the only reason why he's not afraid, he does not say it is because you, God, will remove me for it. Or is it because I know that you, God, will remove the shadow of death. But it is only solely because you are with me there. Okay, you are with me. And that's the pivotal thing that I think we should be reminded of, that even in light of the pandemic, even in the absence of the pandemic, God is still with us. He might seem as if he's silent. And perhaps perhaps the dark cloud or the shadow of death is somehow crippling us. But let us not forget that you cannot have a shadow in the absence of light. and therefore light is constantly there. We know that light is constantly there, and therefore we cannot have a spirit of fear. In fact, the Bible says that I have not given you the spirit of fear, and the one thing that becomes a hindrance is this thing called fear. And that's unfortunately the modus operandi of the devil. That's how the devil operates. He constantly operates in fear. He wants to instill fear in us because he understands what fear does. And that is why the Lord comes in and he says, I have not given you the spirit of fear. So whenever you have fear, that's the time where you need to pray and just ask for one simple thing. Ask one simple thing. Lord, remove the spirit and put in the spirit, your spirit, because I know that when I have your spirit, then I cannot have the spirit of fear. You see, the devil works like this. He works with fear, just like a bully. Just like a bully. You know, when you stand up to a bully, the bully loses power. The bully loses power. So the more fear you have, that in fact fear is the one that clouds our eyes, it clouds our judgments, and we therefore find ourselves forgetting who the Lord is and where we are coming from with the Lord. And sometimes it's not even us, but we simply tap into. Sometimes some of us don't really have these big stories to tell and share about where the Lord has taken us, but we can't always tap only into. I want to try and say this as respectful as I can, but the Lord does not end in our experiences. Okay, the Lord does not end in my experiences. Sometimes it is fitting. Yeah, I think this is the way. Sometimes it is fitting to simply just tap into your neighbor. Just tap into your neighbor and just look at what God has done for them. The thing is, because we are selfish beings, unfortunately, our God becomes God when He does something for us, us as in self. And unfortunately, we then deprive ourselves of experiencing God because we do not want to experience God through the neighbor and so forth and so on. Maybe it's because we don't really like our neighbors, don't really love our neighbors. But anyways, sometimes we need to just simply tap into the neighbor, because sometimes, as much as God, in fact, John knows this very well. John knows this very well. Before he died, he sent a message to Jesus Christ, asking him, "Are you the one?" Because he was in prison. "Are you the one, or should we wait for another? Because now you are not coming to my aid. You are not coming to my aid. You are not removing me from the situation. I'm about to be beheaded, and you are here. But now, I'm not too sure, Ngawe, because now you are not coming to my aid." And then Jesus. When Jesus gets the message, he continues with the daily business which he was doing, which was actually helping other people, not John, but other people. He was still making the cripple to be well, and the sick, and the lame, and the blind. And then after that, he sends message to what has happened. He does not talk to his situation. He talks to the situation of others. And sometimes that is what we need to do, is to simply tap into the situations of others, and we'll realize that God is still God, the one who was, the one who is, and the one who's still to come. Okay, so that is where we need sometimes to really tap into, because we are talking about a God who takes us through things, okay, and through things, through experiences, through challenges, through temptation. That is where we sometimes are able to grasp the essence of God, and the beauty is that God never leaves us, and He never forsakes us. He never forsakes us. So as we walk through, we are not actually walking through, we are being carried through it all. And if ever we find ourselves suffering, we know that we do not suffer in His absence. And we know that we don't just suffer alone, but we suffer with Him together. And one once said, for we serve a suffering God. But that's for another day. But we serve a suffering God, the one who suffers with us, and that's where we take courage that we are suffering with Him. He has not left us alone. We are still with Him, and He's still with us, the one who will never leave us. And yeah, man, let's not forget that. Let's not forget who the Lord is. And so as we are challenged by this disease, this virus. Let's remember that God is not reactionary. He's still with us as he was with us yesterday. And he will be with us even tomorrow. Even if we do perish, it's fine. It's fine. At the end of the day, we do not worship God because we will not perish. Ask the 3 Hebrew boys. It's okay. He is able to save us, we know. But if he chooses not to, okay, and that should be okay with us. If he chooses not to, it's fine. It's fine. Where we go, he has been there. Wherever we go, when we die, if we perish, he is there. Or his footsteps are there. He has once walked that journey. So it's fine. It's fine, man. It's okay. We worship him for who he is, not what he does. Okay? And he says he is the Alpha and the Omega, the ending. He is the beginning, he is the ending. Whatever is in between, it's fine, man. It's fine. And I'd like to close off this message with once again a prayerful thought. I want us to pray especially for this COVID-19, for all the loved ones that have lost. There are countless people whom we have lost. Last I checked, we are reaching the 40,000 in terms of from the global perspective. We had lost. Yeah. And we just want to ask God, we just want to ask the Spirit, the Comforter. We want to ask the Comforter to be just that, the Comforter. At these times, for all those who have lost anyone, be the Comforter. And I believe that God knows the anatomy of the human being better than anyone. And he knows where to touch for you to be comforted. If you have lost a loved one, if you've lost a friend, whoever, I plead that the Lord comes to you in a special way. And his soul and his spirit rests upon your soul at this moment so that you are comforted. And Jesus was not oblivious of this reality when he said he is going to be the Comforter. It's because he knew exactly that there would be times where we are in need of a comforter. And a comforter is not a comforter when we are eating ice cream, when we are enjoying life. It is in times like these where we need a comforter. And we are asking the Lord to be a comforter. And we ask the great physician to tap into the minds and the equipment of the medical staff and the medical world so that we find a cure, we find an antidote, we find a vaccine for this pandemic that is just, eating us left, right, and center. And so at this moment, I want us to pray. We're going to pray now. So wherever you are, I want you to bow with me and pray with me as well. Let us pray. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, at this moment we are at your feet, and that is the best place for a sinner like me and the rest of us. I believe you know what is happening. You know what is happening, and just come to our aid. Come to our aid, Lord. Be with us. Be with the medical staff. Be with those who have lost. Be with the ignorant mind that don't even understand what is happening. Protect us. Protect us, oh Lord. Be with us. Your people are perishing. Be with us. Comfort us. We know that you are with us, but just open our eyes to see you in these dark times. Just open our spiritual eyes. Just show us who you are, the Almighty. We thank you for everything that you have done for us. We thank you for your grace, your love, and mercy. We thank you in Christ Christ's name, amen.
Nkosi ophezulu wena sibhekelela njalo siqinise thina bantu bakho asilutho nje wena Nkosi ophezulu wena sibhekelela njalo siqinise thina bantu bakho asilutho nje akekho omunyonga siphibusiso njengawe Nkosi akekho omunyonga siphibusiso njengawe Nkosi oyehlisa umoya wakho Nkosi yami sifuna awena nomo yoyitwele yehlisa umoya wakho Nkosi yami sifuna